Joining us now is Carnegie Endowment for International Peace Senior Fellow Karim Sajjadpour and independent journalist based in Israel, Noga Tarnopolsky. Karim, I'm going to begin with you. What is the calculation from Iran's point of view, as best we can understand it?
I think the calculation is pretty clear, Katie, in that Iran needs to do something to save face, but they don't want to go so far as risking their lives. They can't not retaliate because it risks being humiliated in the eyes of their own population. All dictators want to be feared by their population, so they feel they need to respond. They also need to respond to save face with the regional proxies. But if the response is excessive, that could risk massive Israeli retaliation or even a U.S. retaliation. And at the end of the day, this regime is deeply ideological, but it's even more committed to staying in power. So those are the parameters of Iran's calculations.
Israel's not taking responsibility for it, but the fact that a Hamas leader can get assassinated within Tehran on the day of the presidential inauguration, the new president there in Iran, what does that say about Iran's intelligence, its ability to keep its own leaders safe?
It's a combination of both Iranian incompetence and that Israel has shown itself able to assassinate either senior Iranian officials or guests of the Iranian regime almost at will. But it's also a sign of the deep discontent within not only Iranian society, but the Iranian regime itself, because if Israel didn't have Iranian government collaborators to work with, they wouldn't be able to so routinely pull off these assassinations.
They are absolutely remarkable. Noga, we ended with Raf saying what it's like to be in Tel Aviv. I know you're in Jerusalem. Everybody's playing this waiting game, but at the same time, there are these news reports about what Benjamin Netanyahu is or is not doing within the negotiation. What is the feeling within Israel about Benjamin Netanyahu, about his leadership, about his ability to put the country before himself?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that very few Israelis at this point believe Netanyahu is capable of doing that. There was, again, another one of these bombshell polls just 2 days ago by the Israel Democracy Institute showing, I think it was less than 20% this time, of Israelis have any faith in his ability to execute this war. So on the one hand, that shows how scared and how unconfident Israelis feel. And on the other hand, looking at it from Netanyahu's perspective, it's a measure of how stubbornly he wants to hold on to power and keep himself in office until those figures can shift. So it's a real tug of war between the population of Israel that, as Raf very well described, is just sort of like sitting ducks for the last 2 weeks, and the prime minister. The other thing that's happening that is just astonishing is an overt tug of war between the nation's security top brass, not just the army, also the Mossad, also the Shin Bet. All of the men, mostly men, in charge of Israeli security are more and more openly pointing the finger at Netanyahu and saying he is setting up obstacles. And Israelis see it in a series of announcements by Netanyahu, that on the one hand, he authorized this delegation to go negotiate in Doha. On the other hand, he has sent one of his personal advisors to kind of supervise the affairs of the head of the Mossad, the head of the Shin Bet. So Israelis feel that Netanyahu is not acting on their behalf, and they see overt signs of it.
Do Israelis have recourse? You're talking about 20% who still believe in him. There's been, obviously, I know, protests on the street. Do they have anything beyond just political pressure going out and marching to get him removed from power? Do they want him removed from power during this war?
Well, I can't remember if it was 80 or 90% of Israelis believe that he should resign. So we can start with that. But they have very little recourse. Netanyahu was legally elected at the very end of December 2022. And since then, he has employed every legal and illegal measure he can to try and ensure that no one will be able to unseat him. So on the one hand, there's just the technical matter that it has to be a parliamentary maneuver that overthrows him if there are going to be early elections, and he has a majority in parliament. On the other hand, throughout this period, and we saw this really called out in an op-ed today by the former Prime Minister Ehud Barak, Netanyahu is taking advantage of the wartime emergency measures to try to really, I would say, harm the civil state in Israel. He's trying to appoint his own cronies, civil service commissioner, and all kinds of other positions that will help him stay in power and possibly help him avoid the conclusion of his own trial, because he's on trial for corruption.